All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for I believe this is our ninth in our speaker series with our student of the quarter. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Nguyen, an international student from Vietnam who's currently attending the master's program in industrial organizational psychology at Wayne State University. Some of you may know her as Vanessa, and a fun fact is that she gave herself that name when she was 9 due to her obsession with the effortlessly cool character, her words, Vanessa Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb, which love that show myself. So, she's obviously a really good person. Um, so she first came to the US as a high school exchange student in a small rural town in Michigan, which I'm sure there was no culture shock there at all, where she quickly fell in love with her host family and with the idea of understanding people across cultures. Though her parents once joked that psychology sounded a bit like fortune telling, Vanessa was determined to study human behavior through science and help people in real, meaningful ways, which led to her current interests in applying IO psychology cross culturally and practically, with a focus on making workplaces more human centered in the age of AI. She is currently exploring how the topics of leadership development, organizational culture, training and development, psychological safety, DEI, and employee engagement and retention intersect. Whew, she's going to know. I'm glad she's not interested in much. And how they can be used to create healthier, more inclusive workplaces, with her ultimate goal being to bring evidence based workplace psychology back to Vietnam, where conversations about mental health at work are really just getting started. So, with that, I welcome you, Key. Please take it away.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I am Vanessa. Please feel free to refer to me as Vanessa. And there's a picture of me as I graduated MSU from 2023, but I am about to tell you my story in a little bit. I just want to say I'm really honored to be here today to share my journey as an international student, as someone who is still growing in the field of IO psychology, and as someone learning how to turn questions about people and purpose into something practical and meaningful. So this talk is about navigating cultures and careers. It's a story. It's about discovering IO psychology, not in a straight line, but through a series of experiences that pushed me, challenged me, and helped me realize how deeply I care about work that helps people live better lives. So, whether you're a student, a practitioner, or just someone curious about how people grow into this field, I hope my story gives you something to reflect on. So, before the US, before Tauki became Vanessa. So as you can see here, this is my family. I love them. They are all still in Vietnam. My brother's never been here. My parents came here once, but I just wanted to give a shout out to the people that made me who I am. Um, and so this is chapter one of me going into the United States. I In 2017, I came to the US as a high school exchange student, and not by choice. It was a random draw. I landed in a small rural town called Bad Axe, Michigan. And later on, I learned that the name came from when people first discovered the town, they found an axe that was broken in a tree, so they named the town Bad Axe. So that's a fun fact. So these photos capture some of my firsts. So we're going left to right, top to bottom. My first day of arrival, my first day of school, my first snowfall, my first Christmas, and my last day as their exchange student. And in the last three photos, we survived COVID and spent Christmas together. And spoiler alert, they offered me to live again with them in 2020 when I started school at MSU, but couldn't live on campus. But more than anything, they really show how much warmth I found in a place that was really cold at first and felt so far from everything I knew. The culture shock totally was not there, sarcastically. I went from the city life in the most populated city. Oh, by the way, this is the skyline of Ho Chi Minh City, where I was born and grew up in, to cornfields and snow and small town Americana, and from your neighbors being a mile far away from you. People talked really fast. They smiled at strangers, and they did not take their shoes off indoors, and they don't use bidets. But my host family welcomed me with open arms and treated me like one of their own, and I love them right back to this day. I spent as much time as I could learning the culture through engaging in different school activities like basketball, cheerleading, band, choir, volunteering. I really dipped my toes into everything. And that year taught me something I've carried with me ever since. That connection isn't about speaking the same language, it's about listening, being curious, and showing up with kindness. And I didn't know it at the time, but this was the beginning of my interest in people, culture, and what makes us feel like we belong somewhere. So now, chapter two. I went from Bad Axe to Chicago. I knew I wanted to come back to the US, so I returned and finished my last 2 years of high school in Chicago, which was a different environment. It was more diverse, fast paced, and urban. And I continued to immerse myself in cultural experiences through clubs and cheerleading, choir, and theater. And I became the famous class of 2020. I graduated when the pandemic started, and around that time, I started thinking more seriously about what I wanted to study because I was about to go to college. I was thinking my host mom in Bad Axe was actually a therapist. She still is. And even during my time there, I remember listening to how she talked about people, how she understood emotion and behavior and helped regulate emotions within the household. We used to have late night snacks and hot cocoa chats where she would tell me these crazy stories about her clients while keeping confidentiality, of course. And I remember I was so fascinated by the stories. And that planted the first seed. I had always cared deeply about mental health, even before I had the words for it. And growing up in a culture where those conversations were still a little taboo, seeing how open people here was really eye-opening. And I realized I didn't just want to be in the US, I wanted to study psychology. So now we're narrowed down to psychology, to understand human behavior in a deeper scientific way. And I didn't know what kind of psychology yet, but I knew I wanted to help people. I got that far. And I knew I was curious about why we do what we do. And then I went to college at MSU, Michigan State University. So I went back to Michigan because I just loved it so much the first time. Um, I interned at Family Counseling, a psychological therapy service where I learned about emotional health and how to support individuals in family systems. I admired the work, it was fun, but I kept asking, how about the environments that people live and work in? And how does that come into play? I also became deeply involved all 3 years in the Vietnamese Culture Union, given that I am Vietnamese, eventually stepping into a vice president role, leading a team, onboarding new members, and navigating team dynamics taught me just how complex group behavior can be. Sometimes we thrived, other times we hit walls. And other times we were in between. And I couldn't stop wondering why. My team and we searched for answers online on how to improve productivity, motivation, and engagement. Without realizing it at the time, I was already asking IO questions like, why do some people thrive at work and why do some don't? Why some don't? What can we do to improve our meeting times and productivity and workflow? So around that time, I also worked at the MSU Work Life office, and this was a big turning point. I got to see the intersection of workplace culture, employee support, family policies, and burnout prevention. It wasn't quite HR, it felt more human centered than that, and I really liked it. I got to conduct research on mental health in the workplace, women in the workplace. I got to present those findings to department heads of Michigan State University and helped with real workplace initiatives. So I thought that was really cool. And that's when the light bulb really went off. I care about people at work, about how people experience it, how leadership affects it, and how it can either protect or harm mental health. I also served as an international student ambassador, which allowed me to help others find community, safety, and voice in a new country, which is another passion of mine. These experiences shaped my values, but they also gave me questions. A lot of questions. Questions about what make teams effective, how to make good leaders, how to be a good leader, what makes a workplace healthy. And those questions, they guided me to IO psychology, but I wasn't quite there yet, unfortunately. Took me a few years. So, um, After I graduated from MSU in 2023, I took a gap year. I had 1 year to work under my OPT visa, and I needed to find an employer that would sponsor it. That's how I started working at the MSU Early Learning Institute as a behavior technician. ABA was very new to me, and learning it was probably one of the coolest thing that I've ever done. I supported children on the autism spectrum. I admired the work. It was scientific and evidence-based and meaningful. It made a difference. No 2 days was ever the same. But at the end of the day, it still felt off. Like I didn't feel in love with that field. So I began reflecting a lot. I asked myself what I actually enjoyed from my past experiences, and I spent way too many hours Googling really general questions like different types of psychology. What should I do after getting my psychology degree? And I did not find an answer, as you probably imagine. So I went to Sean Hankins. He is the director of the MSU Adolescent Diversion Program, which is an amazing program. But anyway, he had a huge influence on me during undergrad, so I went to him with a question, expecting an answer. I said, how do I bring mental health back to Vietnam? And what path lets me get there? And he told me there were two routes to explore, social psychology or IO psychology. And that helped me narrow my focus. I very bravely only applied to two programs, a PhD in social psychology at the University of Michigan and the IOMA program at Wayne State University. I got rejected from Michigan and accepted to Wayne. At first, I saw that as a fallback. My heart kind of dropped, but very quickly I realized that this was exactly where I needed to be. IO psychology brings together all the things I care about: mental health, systems, leadership, evidence based practice, and helping people where they already spend so much of their lives at work. Actually, people spend 90,000 hours of their life at work, and that's about 13 years consecutively, if you really think about it. That rejection redirected me and it led me to something better. And once I got here, everything started clicking. So, why IO psychology? That is the big question that I get asked after telling people the story up until this point, up until my gap year. Um, it wasn't something I always knew existed, but once I found it through Sean, everything made sense. I've always cared about mental health and helping people, but I didn't want to be a therapist. I feel like that would impact me personally negatively a lot. So I wanted to work in at the system level to change the environments people live and work in. I have led teams, I've navigated cross-cultural spaces, I've researched work-life balance and seen firsthand how leadership and workplace culture impact people's lives. And I love structure. I love evidence and logic, not just good intentions. So I want to know whether what we're doing actually works. And turns out IO psychology sits at the intersection of all of that. It lets me help people where they already spend a third of their lives once again at work. And it helps me think deeply about leadership, culture, and inclusion. And it gives me the tools to make real research backed change. In a way, I didn't choose IO psychology. I just followed the questions I couldn't stop asking, and they let me here. In Vietnamese, we have a saying, you don't choose your career, it chooses you. And I guess it really applies to me in this scenario. So, grad school year one that I have just finished. Once I started at Wayne, everything became very real and honestly a little bit intimidating at first. I have finished 3 semesters. The fall semester included Intro to Statistics. And I'll be honest, I am not a stats person, but I learned what I needed to. And more importantly, I learned how to ask better research questions. And that alone was worth it. And also, I learned how easy it was to manipulate data into convincing people of certain things. And then came Intro to Organizational Behavior, which was the first into IO psychology, which helped me connect theory to real team dynamics, things I'd already experienced in student orgs, but now I had the language for it. And then I took an elective called Complex Organizations. It was a business course, which added a systems and business lens. It looked at how structure, culture, and power shape behavior in a business way. It was new territory, but it opened my thinking. And I didn't know it, but apparently in the world of IO, you should know how to speak the language of business as well. So those classes really helped me. My second semester, the winter of 2025, I took research methods in IO psychology, and that was a turning point. Content wasn't too complex, but the professor, Dr. Kimberly, she's here right now. And I would just like to give a big shout out to her because if it weren't for her, I would not be here. So thank you, Dr. Kim. It was one of my favorite classes, and it helped me build confidence in my voice as a researcher and in my career. I also took psychometrics, which we'll talk more about in a moment. It was another very stats heavy class, which was challenging for me, but it gave me a deeper respect for measurement, for assessment, and why we need to test things properly. The elective I took that semester was Managing Organizational Behavior, another business course, which really helped me think through what leadership feels like on the ground. It talked about motivation, influence, team performance, and problem solving in organizations. My third semester, which just ended, included training and employee development, a class I really loved. It was hands-on, collaborative, and practical. It showed me how IO can impact people directly through learning, growth, and cross-cultural understanding, which I'll show you a final project I did for that as well. So let's talk about the psychometrics project. Um, my team and I, well, my team had Rachel and Kennedy. I'm not sure if they're here or not, but I did invite them. We did our project on the topic of retirement related financial literacy and retirement preparedness. So the objective was to create two scales, pilot them, and analyze them in terms of reliability, factor analysis, etc. We aim to measure something very real, retirement. We created two tools from scratch, a 24-item financial literacy quiz and a 22-item self-report scale measuring how prepared people feel across different dimensions. We piloted the tools with 92 participants and ran several statistical processes to evaluate them. This took a really long time. First, we ran reliability analyses using Cronbach's Alpha, and the numbers showed that these skills were solid, especially for early tools. And then we ran a factor analysis on each of the scale, and it gave us three clean factors for the self-report scale: financial, psychological, and lifestyle preparedness. And the quiz, on the other hand, it needed more work. Some items were unclear or too easy or hard. That's why the factor analysis yielded about 10 factors, which was a little messy. We also did a distractor analysis on each scale to evaluate which items were functioning well and which weren't. That helped us revise or flag poorly performing questions. We then conducted ANOVAs to examine group differences. So we found that age, income, and education all showed significant effects, but sex and race did not, which speaks to the potential fairness of the tools. Though our sample was mostly Caucasian and female, so generalizability is a little bit limited. So it was as we expected, people who are older, closer to the age of retirement, who were making more and who had higher education felt more prepared, and they were actually more prepared financially as well for retirement. We tested validity by correlating the two tools. We found a moderate correlation of about zero point 0.3, suggesting that they are related but distinct. So generally, who people who feel prepared are actually prepared and vice versa. But in this case, some people might feel prepared without scoring high on the financial literacy quiz or vice versa. Altogether, these analyses gave us a solid picture of the tool's early performance. More importantly, they taught me what it means to create scales that are not just reliable, but also fair, useful, and meaningful. From an IO lens, I see these kinds of tools being useful in retirement education programs, employee wellness initiatives, or even career transition coaching. Anywhere you want to help people make informed, confident decisions about their future. It also reminded me that psychometrics is about measuring what matters and doing it responsibly, even though it is very hard and time consuming, at least for me anyway. So that's that about the psychometrics project. I will be talking about the training and employee development project that we did, my team and I did, this past summer semester. So our objective was to design a sexual harassment training program for a multinational soft drink company, which we called Soda Pop Company, with employees in both the United States and Saudi Arabia. That meant we had to think beyond just content. Con- content, sorry. We had to think about culture, communication, and context as well. So we started with a needs assessment looking at industry trends, legal requirements, and organizational pain points. And then we chose a multimodal delivery format and specific activities that would work across different cultural environments. And to structure the training, we applied Bloom's taxonomy to define learning objectives, which aligns with the previously identified business objectives at multiple levels. And then to ensure engagement, we considered Kolb's learning styles. So the training included reflective discussion, hands-on scenario analysis, and observation-based learning to reach learners across all dimensions. And then we designed a Kirkpatrick aligned evaluation plan across all four levels. We used Hofstadt's cultural dimensions to guide our adaptation. The US scored high in individualism and low in power distance, while Saudi Arabia scored the opposite. So that affected everything from who leads the training to how feedback is received to whether bystander intervention is emphasized. And lastly, we developed a comprehensive course information map, one for each country based on all of the information gathered in the previous steps that I just told you about. So, my favorite part was thinking about psychological safety and cultural differences, how to make a training feel not just informative and mandatory, but also safe, respectful, inclusive, and effective for everyone. This project showed me how IO psychology can help organizations handle sensitive, high impact topics in a way that's culturally responsible, educational, and change oriented. So, now that I have taken you on a trip down memory lane, which was very long, this is exactly where I am right now. I just wrapped up my first year in the program, and I'm actively looking for a fall internship to try things out and get hands-on. I've been gravitating towards areas that I really enjoy, leadership and organizational development. I love thinking about how to grow people and teams and leaders in meaningful ways. Training and learning largely because I just took that class and I really liked it, especially designing programs that actually stick and make a difference. Culture, DEI, and psychological safety because people can't thrive at work if they don't feel safe and included. I am still figuring out what my thing is in IO, but that's kind of the fun part. Right now, I get to experience and dip my toes in everything, and I'm having a lot of conversations, building my portfolio, and staying open to where the field might take me. Alongside that, I've been putting a lot of energy into personal branding, learning how to tell my story, which here we are, connect with others in the field, and most importantly, explain what IO psychology even is. A lot of people still don't know, surprisingly, and I love being part of the conversation that helps demystify it. I've also been working on translating data into stories and learning how to make insights useful, not just interesting. I don't know exactly what's next yet, but I know that I'm on the right track. This year is about trying things, building confidence, and finding where I fit in the field. Let's talk about the future. So my ultimate moment where I say I've made it is when I get to bring IO psychology back to Vietnam and make it a thing. In Vietnam, conversations about mental health at work are close to non-existent. Mental health in general are in the early stages. There's a lot of stigma around that, and that's just culture. And there's confusion, and there is a huge need for evidence-based approaches that improve how people experience work. And that is where IO psychology comes in. This field is about people, and systems. And that's exactly what we need more of, systems that support well being, leadership, fairness, and growth. And I want to take what I've learned here, all the tools, the mindset, the science, and bring it back home. Not to impose, but to translate, to adapt, and build something that works in the Vietnamese context. Even though I know it'll be a long and hard journey, I would just really love for people in Vietnam to have a personal revelation like I did when they realize that their mental health actually matters, especially at work. I have seen what IO can do when it's applied well. I have also seen what happens when work feels depressing, meaningless, harmful, or isolating. And I know we can do better. So that's my long game. I'm building it one conversation, one connection, one step at a time. And hopefully I'll get there one day. So thank you all so much for listening. This webinar is one of my small, big moments. Um, it means a lot that you listen to my story, and I would like to thank Dr. Pam, Lee, and Arlene for giving students like me a space to share, connect, and grow. To my fellow students, you are not behind, you're building. Do not compare your journey to other people. To professionals, if you're open to mentoring, I'd love to connect and learn from you. Also, if you're not a fan of statistics but love helping people, I think we should talk. And the QR code on the screen will take you to my LinkedIn profile. So let's connect. And really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here today. Every connection makes the journey more meaningful. Thank you for being part of mine and made it just that much more meaningful today. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. I just love your energy. You're entertaining, so I love your energy and your passion.
I
So I know I have a few questions, but I wanna wait for others to pop in. And that means even you, Dr. Kim, to see if you can quiz Vanessa on things from class. Did you get it right?
please don't.
Now I'll take her back to her psychometrics class. She
No,
absolutely
thank
loved
you.
that one.
No, that was a no-no. That was a no-no in research methods. We don't talk about the other class.
We don't talk about the other
No,
class. Vanessa, you did a great job. I'm so excited to have been part of your journey. I was sitting here in tears through most of it. You are so dynamic, and I'm so glad to have been a part of it. So well done, well done.
thank you. I would not be here. Sincerely, I would not be here if it weren't for you, Dr. Kim. I would not have sent Dr. Pam a message if you didn't say, hey, I think you should do it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So any questions from anyone? Because otherwise, I will dive into mine. Maybe that'll help get some questions going.
Yes.
So, okay, Ashley. So Ashley's got one. Would obtaining a work sponsorship be more challenging for students in 2025 from your personal experience?
Um, the short answer is yes. The long answer is it depends. Our favorite and least favorite answer of all time. So I think with everything that is going on in the world right now and in the United States, I feel like companies, employers, they are a little more reluctant to sponsor a work visa for students, especially if the prospective employee was to be someone with an established career, kind of more stable, then I don't see why they would be reluctant. But to kind of take a risk for students who have just graduated, especially like me or who is about to graduate, I think they are a little more hesitant to do so because everything is so unpredictable right now. You never know when, maybe one day the work visa program could be terminated or something like that. And then they, it would impact the company greatly. I know from my personal experience, it has been quite difficult to find an internship that would sponsor CPT, which allows me to work when I'm still in the course of my program. Um, a lot of companies, obviously, they can't say that they won't accept my application because I'm an international student, but just it's call it a gut feeling type of, like I've had the interview, it went well, I felt good about my application, but at the end of the day, they said they've gone with someone else, and I'm sure that other person is very qualified. I just couldn't pinpoint where it went wrong. So I just took a guess that it was because of my CPT. Um, but yeah, great question. It's not an ideal situation to be in right now, but you know, c'est la vie.
So any other questions? All right, so I'm going to dive into mine. I've got 2 so far. So going back to your training development project,
Yes.
what got you guys to choose Saudi Arabia?
Actually, we didn't choose Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
It was given to us in the prompt.
Ah,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. But we found it was a big learning moment when we researched more about the culture in Saudi Arabia and how much it contrasted the US's culture. Um, we were talking about like dress code and how that might impact the whole sexual harassment trends and all that jazz, and how we could deliver the training. And I had an idea that maybe we should incorporate their religious views into the training, because I believe that that could work. But I learned that there need to be conversations happening beforehand, obviously, to make sure that that is culturally sensitive, to make sure that we are not overstepping by telling them what their religion says about sexual harassment. So it was a great big learning moment, and I really enjoyed diving into the culture differences between the US and Saudi Arabia.
Have you seen, I still have one more question, but to kind of segue off this one, have you seen, or has it become a little bit easier to understand other cultures outside of Vietnam? And now that you've been in the US for what, almost 8 years or so, you've kind of seen the diversity that is in the US. Has this just kind of allowed you to see the world a little bit differently?
Yes, it has. My global journey kind of started really young. My family traveled a lot when I was young, and I also traveled by myself. I don't think that this was mentioned, but I did go to North Korea to represent Vietnam at a youth delegation summer camp trip, and also Russia in a similar trip in the same summer. So going on all of those trips and meeting all these new people and eating all the new foods, I actually believe that eating like another country's food is a way to learn their culture. Like you just gotta eat it, and then your brain will understand. I genuinely believe that. But yes, it gave me a very different life perspective. um, it definitely gives me more empathy for other people, just because I have seen how vastly different everybody thinks. So it is never a good idea to just assume that this person should know this or this person should know that. And I learned to ask questions, be really inquisitive, and people love telling other people about their own culture. And I love listening to those stories because it's so fascinating. Yeah, so short answer is yes, definitely 100%.
Well, neat little story there. So Arlene's got a question, and then I'll go off to mine unless something else pops in. So Arlene's question is, what kind of needs assessment did you do for this project?
So there were a few needs assessment that we could choose from. What I think what we chose was, let me see, let me try to dig deep into my brain. Oh, focus interviews was the first one that we chose to do. The second one was a self-report survey. And then the third one would be HR records review to kind of cross-check all the information that we got from the first two. I was actually in charge of the needs assessment part, and we actually didn't do any actual needs assessment. But if this was real life, then we would first do a focus groups with employees that have made the complaints, and also like just people around those employees, and also obviously leaders. And then from that information, we can create a survey to kind of target different maybe locations or perhaps like job titles that we may see a trend in the problem or whatnot and gain a more broad understanding of the situation. And then at the end, we'll do HR records review. Obviously, that's not entirely complete because a lot of people don't report sexual harassment, probably especially in Saudi Arabia, but it'll help us like just cross check and make sure that everything we heard and read made sense.
So an add-on there based on something you mentioned, and this dives into, nope, I'm not going to go down that path because it may not be accurate. So it's the sensitivity surrounding talking to people that may have experienced that type of behavior from others. Did you bring in any of that type of discussion of how you would maneuver those conversations with people that may be hesitant to come forward to talk about it? I mean, it's crucial that they do, but there's a lot of hesitancy for people like that to come forward because they become more of a target.
Yep.
So did you bring any of that into, your overall discussion or kind of closing out, the whole project?
We did talk about that, and I think that the survey part was a really good one because it was an anonymous survey, so people can feel free, and it would actually be anonymous. Their leaders won't have access to it besides us. So I think that that would be a good way for them to talk if they wanted to. But if they didn't, then I think we were just going to make the training in and of itself sensitive to everybody, kind of assuming that everybody is uncomfortable with this. And definitely emphasizing on bystander intervention, on what you should do when you see this happen to other people, what you should do when this happens to yourself, and how is it gonna be guaranteed that you will be protected and not get retaliation. So all of that was definitely in our discussions, but there wasn't much that we could do in terms of developing the training itself to take into consideration those kinds of sensitivities.
Fair enough. So you mentioned the bystander intervention. And so that was my next question. I'll have Vanessa answer that and then I'll go to your question, Kim. So explain a little bit more about that bystander intervention because not a whole lot may understand it from that particular term or that particular, concept.
Yeah.
And then how have you how do you translate that between cultures? Because there's such a big difference. I mean, it's the flip
Yeah.
between, these two countries.
So, bystander intervention in the context of sexual harassment training would be to train everybody, like on what to do, who to go to, what to say, what to report when you have seen someone or something happen and you weren't the victim, you weren't the perpetrator, you were just a bystander. So across cultures, it might look a little bit something like this. So like in the US, the US is a very individualistic country. So maybe we can frame it as, what if this was to happen to you? What would you want other people to do? What would you want someone who has witnessed it to do when you don't want to go to the authorities yourself, right? You would want someone to do it for you, so maybe you should do it for them. Kind of something like that. But in Saudi Arabia, it's more um they like structure more than the US. So perhaps training them on, okay, here is the reporting ladder. This is the hierarchy. You go to this person goes to that person and goes to that person, and this is what gets done at each step. And obviously, we would have to make sure that the leaders are in correspondence with that. And then also just telling them like straight out, maybe it won't be good for the harmoniousness of the community if you don't do anything about it, because they care more about keeping balance and peace and harmony in the
Yes.
workplace and not standing out, right? So
Mhm.
perhaps giving them an anonymous channel to do the reporting, that'll help encourage them do it more. And now that they know who to go to, now that they know who's on their side, perhaps they'll do it via that anonymous channel and just framing it in their own cultural language, I think would really help.
Cool. No, I appreciate that because, like I said, I don't think many really understand it from that bystander and actually uh, how to respond.
Yep.
Because well, I don't know, what do I do?
Yep.
So thank you for that, and using whatever medium we can to help explain what it means and so forth.
Yep.
I'm going to take the opportunity. So Kim's question is a really good one. So how do you think things would be different if you would have gotten into the PhD program?
It would be so, so different. As I have made it more than abundantly clear, I don't like statistics. Um, if I was to end up in that PhD program, I think I would be a lot more stressed than I am now. Um, and I think now that I think back on it, social psych, yes, it is a niche within psychology, but it's nothing that I can see, feel, and touch. It's not as applied or as clear to me as I would like for it to be for me to pursue it as a career. Um, I'd be living in Ann Arbor. I don't know how I probably love it more than living in Detroit, to be honest. I probably would love it a little more. Um, but yeah, it's I think I think I wouldn't have liked it as much. It'd be a lot of writing, a lot of research, and a lot of statistics. And that's a lot of no-nos and no's for me. So I am so glad that the stars aligned and I'm here at Wayne State doing my IO master's program that's very applied, very hands-on, and I have met so many amazing people. I wouldn't be in this community if I went to UMich. So, you know. I think I'm right where I need to be.
Um, Other questions? Anything else? Because I kind of ran through questions that I came up with. What else can we quiz Vanessa on?
Not psychometrics, not statistics.
So Vanessa, you obviously you had to deal with the total lack of culture shock, as you said. Uh, going from Ho Chi Minh City to Bad Axe. Um, just looking back now, how do you think that might have been different with the knowledge that you have now versus what you knew then?
Uh, well, okay, could you clarify the question a little bit more for me? Like how could it have been different if
Sure. Yeah, because obviously came from Southeast Asia, urban, very different culture to small town Michigan, Midwest, United States. You know, I mean, let's face it, I'm from Louisiana. I would have had a culture shock going to Bad Act, Michigan. So knowing what you know now about psychology and human interactions and uh, cultural differences and whatever else,
Mhm.
how do you think that would have affected your first impressions, your adjustment phase, your settling in, all those things?
Oh, so like if I had a time machine and I could keep all my knowledge now, but go back to 2017, I think that'd be really cool. But knowing everything that I know now about human behavior and interaction, definitely I would not. Well, I didn't have a gigantic culture shock in the first place, but with everything I know now, I think um I wouldn't have a culture shock at all. I would be so open-minded at that point that anything goes. And I would obviously I know the US culture now and I know how people and their brains operate and their behaviors operate. I'd probably be a little more understanding to the things that perhaps other people were doing that I might have perceived as being offensive back then. Or, well, I think I wasn't even aware of it back then when it first happened, but I'm pretty sure some of my classmates were being racist towards me, but I was not aware of it. Until now, I was thinking about it and I'm like, oh, I guess that was really racist. I just didn't know. But now that I know, I probably would have put more effort into telling them about the Vietnamese culture just as much as I was learning their culture. Like, if I take it from them, I give some back. I think I would have done that differently. Um, I think I was too focused on assimilating and fitting in and trying to look and talk like everybody else that I kind of forgot about how important it is that I am still that kid who is representing my country on this youth delegation trip. I am always going to be that kid to the rest of the world, and I should take every chance that I get to share with them my culture.
That was a great answer. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, that was a very good answer.
thank you. FedEx Michigan population is 3,000 people. That's actually a lot more than the number of people that I saw when I was there. I mean, we pretty much lived in town of Bad Axe, and we did not see that many people. Either they don't go out a lot, or
Cornfield.
yeah.
It's Michigan, it's cornfields.
Yep. There was a lot of corn and a lot of fields, and I was like, you guys have all this land, and you're not building houses on it? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Nope, it's farming.
Yeah.
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 Don't give him any uh ideas.
Oh, okay, I got it.
So any other questions? Otherwise, we will have Lee. Lee can do this. You can do this one, Lee. Give us a heads up on our next speaker for August.
I would be happy to. So, one of my favorite humans on the planet is speaking to us uh, next month. Uh, Ms. Ashley Wilson is going to come in and talk, as you can see on the screen there, integrating code, data storytelling, and AI. I just can't say enough nice. I mean, she argues with me when she needs to, and she's very very open-minded and is just a joy. And she also is a very, very big proponent of we need more tech in IO. We need more coding classes. We need more AI classes. We need the tools in our programs to make our graduates more competitive in today's market. And I couldn't agree more. And fascinating. I'm looking forward to it. So I hope you'll join us on the third Tuesday next month and August 19th. So yeah, there you go. If you want to go ahead and jump to the next slide. Alrighty, there you go. So we do encourage you, if we are not connected, we encourage you to, connect with us on LinkedIn, and always happy to have a conversation. Also, this community, we do have weekly meetups on Thursdays that start at 6:30 Eastern, and go for several hours, and we just have a lot of discussion. So please feel free to come join us for that. And as I said earlier, the recording of this on a few days will be on our YouTube channel, which you see the address there. So please feel free to share that with others. Also, when you exit out of Zoom, a browser window will open with a very, very brief post-event survey. We ask that you go ahead and complete that. It helps us as we bring in speakers for you. So, the speakers in the end, the topic. So please do fill that out for us. We greatly appreciate that. And thank you, Vanessa. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. And thank you, Dr. Kim, for suggesting. You did a great job. We really appreciate you. Any parting thoughts, Dr. Pam or Arlene or even Vanessa?
Nope, other than I look forward to where she goes next.
I will let you all know because I don't know yet.
Absolutely. You're going to bring us along no matter what, whether
Yes,
you
I
like it or
will.
not.
Even if I go back to the cornfields, I will let you know.
Okay,
Good.
sounds good.
Good.
Sounds good. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording, and I thank you
Yep.
all. And I hope to see you again in an event soon.